This is the wrap-up show from thisistheconversation.com featuring me, Jay Cleveland Payne, and once again, the Blitzkrieg edition. We'll see if this becomes the true and tried and true edition coming forward. But right now we have a lot of things going on, a lot of irons in the fire, a lot of firefighting, if you will. And so in order to make sure we produce something, we're producing a really quick flash version of what we've been doing for the last year or so and the last couple of months. We reestablished it. We want to make sure we're doing it, staying consistent. Let us know how you like it, how you don't like it, what we can do to hopefully improve on this format, because we think the short, quick format is what's going to stay. We've been trying to rework in all of the interviews. Just hadn't worked out with the time frame we have going on. So until we can get a bigger cachet in the world of podcasting for more people to kind of pay attention to us, we're doing what we can do. So we want to keep you up with the conversations you have had this week, all week long, from Thursday to Thursday or Friday to Friday, for about 8-ish days, 7.5-ish days or so, as we stretch from the end of the work week, Friday of last week, that being the 9th, all the way to today, the 16th, as it's being recorded. We publish this as for the week ending on the Saturday, so today's official date is going to be November the 17th, but it's basically Friday morning-ish to Friday morning-ish. So these are the conversations that you were really into in the following week, or the past week, I should say. These are some very big Chiron stories. In fact, we are dominated by stories that have to do with the wildfires in California. There's like 4 different ones going right now. And they all essentially get some sort of name calling in on the top 10 and into the almost thens in the 11 through 15s. So we didn't do any super stories this week because we're blitzkrieging, as you will. But each one is a distinct story in itself. So that we'll get to in just a moment. Of course, we will talk about the almost relevant story this week. Light on the posting this week, only 106 distinct different posts. We hope to be back to full form and posting a lot more in about 2 weeks. Next week will also be kind of a struggle to get good stories in, but you picked the stories you wanted to hear, and what we had plenty of responses going there. To be a part of the responses, it's simple. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Facebook, it's This Is The Conversation. Twitter, it's @_conversation. And as the conversations pop up, like, love, share, reply, do what you need to do to interact with them. The more interactions, the more engagements they get, the higher score they get for the week, and they get into the top 10, and sometimes nowhere. And usually the almost relevant story of the week is something we post fairly late into the posting, one of the last things posted before we do the tally. So don't feel bad if it doesn't get much love. We give you love right here. So let's go ahead and get into, very quickly, the listings for this week. We're still counting them down from 10 to 1 for the top 10. And oddly enough, this week's number 10 story was the big story for Facebook, the most responses on Facebook this week, which means there was a lot of mixture and a whole lot of Twitter love for the things going on this week. The story headline is Couple Stopped by Police Files $4 million Lawsuit Against Costco. A couple stopped by police in a Costco a few weeks filed a pretty big lawsuit against the store for what went down. That we posted on Friday, November the 9th. Going on to the number 9 story, wealthy residents of Eagle Landing voted Tuesday on whether to secede from the metro Atlanta city of Stockbridge just after a black mayor and an all-black city council took office. The headline explains it all. Friday, November 9th, posted on this one as well. This one gets a bumper response from the 10 story of 7.08% from you guys out there. Moving quickly to the number 8 story, Ruth Bader Ginsburg plans to resume workouts next week. That headline we posted on Tuesday, November the 13th. Bumper response of 0.83%, just slightly up from the 9 story. Why is the headline even relevant? Because Ruth Bader Ginsburg fell in her office a few weeks ago and broke 3 ribs, and being that she's in her 80s and saying that she's going to stay in her job until Trump is gone, however long that takes, she's got to get back into pretty good shape. So she's going to do her amazing workouts for an 85-year-old, 80-ish-year-old, probably knocked me out a couple times. Other than the fall, that's all that's happening. Number 7 story hits pretty close to home, Arkansas specifically, and the story headline is Arkansas man arrested for alleged death threats against CNN anchor. That CNN anchor was Don Lemon. The Arkansas man is an idiot. We posted this on Monday, November the 12th. Gets a bumper response from the 8 story of 2.46%. Moving on to our 6 for this week. American Airlines sued for flight attendant brawl. Sometimes those happen, and the airlines usually get sued for stuff like that. Sunday, November the 11th was the date for that one. 13.60% bump in response from the number 7 story. Now to number 5, one of two pretty big football stories for the week. Let's go to this one. The headline is, due to poor field conditions at Azteca Stadium in Mexico City, NFL elected to move Monday night's Chiefs-Rams games to Los Angeles. Tuesday, we posted this one, the 13th. It gets a bumper response of 14.08% from the 6th story. More details on this one. Of course, the NFL is playing more games outside of the national, being America, to get more exposure. They played a couple games in London already, and they have plenty of big responses from fans overseas who get a kick out of American football. American football is actually very popular in Mexico. What isn't very popular is keeping up with your stadiums when you're not inside of soccer season, because soccer is the dominant sport. So the stadium at Azteca Stadium, should say, was not in good condition due to weather conditions and just not good keep up. So they've moved that game to Los Angeles to take on there, which is sort of sucks for the Chiefs, because they had they had an advantage of not being a home game for the Rams, and it kind of sucks for the NFL because logistically it doesn't look good. Number 4 story, plenty of fire stories. This is one of them. Smoke from campfire visible in Sacramento Kings Arena before game versus Los Angeles Lakers. Saturday, November 10th, I should say on that one. Bumper response of 29.1% from the 5th story. So that tells you how high these things are going at this point. So here's literally what happened. The fires that popped up out of nowhere last week were growing in very big numbers and causing a lot of issues with damage and, of course, just the general landscape. The smoke was so bad and so thick and traveled so far that in Sacramento, the smoke was inside the building, literally inside the arena, as the Lakers and the Kings were beginning to play that game that night. The number 3 story, entire city of Malibu under mandatory evacuation order due to relentless Woodsley fire. That's a separate fire. Friday, November 9th on that one. Bumper response of 0.96. Slight bumper response from the 4th story there. Number 2 story, which is a bit of a surprise, but maybe not so because, of age. Tom Cruise will not fly fighter jets in Top Gun sequel. We don't know the full plot of the story, but we know at this point he ain't going to be in the cockpit. Bumper response from the 3 story, get this, 84.36%. Getting a bit ahead of myself. 84.36% from the number 3 story, with Tom Cruise not being the pilot. He's still Maverick. He just ain't flying anything, at least in this sequel. And I get ahead of myself. The number 1 story gets a bumper response from the 2 story of 37.26%. It is the top Twitter story for the week. It gets a bumper response from the number 10 story, which, of course, was the couple in Colorado, a couple that got stopped in the Costco and filed a lawsuit. That bumper response was 372%. And from the almost relevant story of the week, by the way, 105, 5,833%. Headline: by failing to report to the Steelers on Tuesday, Le'Veon Bell is ineligible to play this NFL season. He will lose $14.5 million by holding out the entire year. Tuesday, November the 13th on that one. I've already given you the range on that. So those of you who don't follow the American football very much, Le'Veon Bell was a holdout. That means he was signed to a contract this year, but refused to show up. Just didn't show up for work. Because he doesn't get paid. But there's a deadline for things in these businesses. There's a deadline for people to be signed, so there's no funny business being done with people and or money. There's a deadline for people to be traded, so there's no funny business between people, teams, and money. And a deadline for people who believe they're going to play to show up, because they don't want people coming up at the very last end and showing up for like the Super Bowl, for the championship game, without at least playing the year, unless there's some certain circumstances. Oftentimes they'll pick up some guys very late in the season or in the playoffs because they lose a member, and they can legally do that because they have people in reserves on certain contracts and on their practice teams, people that just sort of play on practice and just kind of there just in case somebody needs somebody. Le'Veon Bell is a star running back. He was expected to come back and play some big numbers, big downs, and and just basically had to show up for work to set up a trade so he can get out of the Steelers, get out of Pittsburgh, and he just didn't show up. He's giving up $14.5 million because he can't get paid if he doesn't show up. That's how the NFL works. So that may suck for him, or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's all a part of the big master plan. What sucked for us is we're done with the top 10, so we've got to move on pretty quickly with what we have going on here. If you want to keep us on the air quotes, if you will, just check out our sponsors page at thisisaconversation.com. Check out the website and the sponsors page. There's plenty of great sponsors, there's plenty of great people who take care of us that would love to take care of you, including Fresh Books, the nice folks at Bear Mattress, and of course, my personal favorite, Cloud9 Living. So go there. That sponsors the sponsors page at thisisaconversation.com and check out a couple sponsors and see if they can do some great things for you. They will do great things for us by helping us keep this thing going a few days longer. So let's go ahead and talk about the almost irrelevant story first, because that builds up to what didn't make it in. What barely made it into the countdown this week was a survey that said the average season holiday spending for Christmas is up $1,000 this year, just over $1,000 this year. So if you're not spending $1,000, you're not average. So if you're not spending $1,000, you're probably doing much better than many of us. But that's the average amount of money spent on Christmas. And that's not just presents. That's the whole season. That's decorations. That's maybe travel as well. But if you talk about your Christmas packages, what you do for Christmas, all the accoutrements that go along with it, including the tree and the presents, $1,000 is about what the family's going to spend this season. So what stories weren't quite good enough to get into the top 10 this week? Let's start with the number 11 story, another fire story. The Westwood filming location at Paramount Ranch burned down due to the wildfire. I believe it was the campfire that took this one down, but the space where they filmed Westwood and plenty of other Western-themed things burnt because of the fires. Friday, November 9th was a posting on that one. The number 12 story this week, Amazon chooses New York City and Northern Virginia for additional headquarters. Controversial, but it happened on Tuesday, and we posted about the planned announcement on Monday, November the 12th. Some controversial things happening. The newest congresswoman from New York is pitching a fit because she's saying that Amazon is essentially looking for cheap workers and basically are scamming the world in New York City for their location for their new headquarters, half headquarters, if you will. And in Virginia, there's a whole sort of thing about National City and Crystal City, the fact that Amazon came in and just renamed the part of town, and everybody's just kind of going along with it. There's a lot of other things that are happening. Now, this next story for 13 is one I thought was going to make it into the top 10 spot because it came in pretty hot and heavy, pun intended. It didn't quite last the rest of the week, but it was a pretty big deal, and I had to do some Black Twitter explanation to one of my coworkers. She always wants in on the Black Twitter thing, and so I let her in on this one. Jill Scott shows off mouth love skills on a mic. Twitter clutching pearls. Tuesday, November 13th for that one, and what this is all about. If you do not know, Jill Scott is a very popular R&B singer known for smooth love songs and just this positive image and, black girl, big girl love type stuff. Well, she showed some love from a big girl as she had a performance the other night where she performed a little bit of a simulated oral sex act on a microphone, which of course was recorded and went across the internets and the Twitter and the Black Twitter, which you don't know. It's basically black people being black people on Twitter. Went nuts. Some of them were praising the act. Some of them were a little surprised Miss Jill was going there. A lot of people jumping in on the action. No pun intended that time. Number 14 story. Starbucks cuts 5% of corporate workers Wednesday, November the 14th on that one. And this isn't necessarily a dig on the whole big jump on minimum wage anywhere. It's basically restructuring corporate stuff. At least that's the picture I get from it. I'm not blaming higher minimum wage on this one. This is something that Starbucks is going to do pretty much anywhere. And they're not just dropping stores. Well, they're dropping some stores because, as you know, there's usually a Starbucks around the corner from a Starbucks, which is usually across the street from a Starbucks, which is pretty close to some sort of place like a Barnes & Noble or a Target that sells Starbucks coffee. Kroger used to sell Starbucks coffee as well. But that's not the issue. They're basically slimming down the workforce, and that's not by a lot. It's not a massive cut in the grand scheme of things. If this was about a money thing, it'd be more money and more people. And in fact, they're adding more things going on as they're revamping. They're adding in the special Starbucks bars in some places, which are actual bars. They're adding in more things for employees to get. So it's essentially trimming down some of the smaller stores and some of the smaller issues. Not so much dead weight, but just kind of getting things in order to keep things going. So, the number 15 story this week, the last one on the list. Mexican citizen on death row in Texas was executed Wednesday night for the sledgehammer killings of his wife and 2 children. Very brutal on that one. We posted that on Thursday, November the 15th. This is a story that's been decades in the making. This happened many, many years ago. A Mexican man, a citizen of Mexico, has been on American death row for the killing of his American wife and children. It just took that long to execute him. I'm not sure why. Texas, one of the states that is pretty quick to take care of the death penalty cases, not going decades, but I'm sure there was some legal wrangling with his actual status and making sure things were done. If you're going to do this thing, you make sure you're doing it right. So I'm glad it took this long to make it work out. Not so glad for the reason we have to do this. But we had to do this whole thing, which was the weekly wrap-up show, and I'm glad we did it. We didn't do it quite as fanatically and fun as it could be, but we're making sure we get it done. Sometimes done is better than better. So we got it done. Thank you for joining us for the week and joining in for making this thing happen. You really made it happen. There were plenty of other Chiron stories that were really big, really important, really, really hard-hitting. But we try to mix in as much general news and sometimes weird news and sometimes just weird stuff. And you tell me what is pretty interesting, and that's why I got a top 10 for this week. You let me know that Le'Veon Bell was the biggest thing on your minds somehow. So that's what you guys picked up on. That's what we said. You can determine what's going to be big next week by following us on Facebook or Twitter. Follow us on Instagram as well, but that's not going to get counted because we only put the daily roundups on there. Instagram's not exactly conducive for the conversations, but it sends you back to the website and other places to follow as well. And that's the good thing. So follow us everywhere. On Twitter is important, th_conversation. And Facebook is This Is the Conversation. When you see a reply, when you see a story, just respond to it in some way. Interact with it. The more interactions they get, the higher score they get for the week. Go to the main website, thisistheconversation.com, and check out plenty of things there, including our sponsors. Keep us on the air. Anything you want to know about me, particularly, check out jclevelandpayne.net or jclevelandpayne@gmail.com and email the actual show at theconversationinbox@gmail.com. Yeah, we're working on that too. Trust me. So for me, Jay Cleveland Payne, I'm Jay Cleveland Payne saying thank you so much for being a part of the whole week's worth of conversations, and be here next week for more great stuff. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss out and it comes directly to your feed. It's found wherever your pods are cast, and just stick around for more conversation for another weekly wrap-up show from thisistheconversation.com.